Hello, today we're talking about JK Rowling, but it's a positive thing. Not about JK Rowling, no, but about what other people are saying about her and the support for the trans community at the minute. Hey Spuds, it's Jamie, how's it going? Welcome back to another video first on our channel. I don't know, but welcome either way. As you will already know, this video is around JK Rowling, the very well-known transphobe who also happens to be an author. This video is completely spontaneous, it may be a little bit chaotic, but I wanted to make it because I just read an article about what Stephen Fry has recently said about JK Rowling's views and how what he's saying has evolved and has become much more strongly supportive of the trans community and anti-JK Rowling in the past few years, because he said something back in 2022 that was kind of on the fence, to be honest, and a lot of people were disappointed, but now his recent statements are a lot more pro-trans, very strongly, to be honest, and I wanted to read that article and what he said. JK Rowling has had something to say about it, and basically have a look at what a lot of the other cast members have or haven't said, because really when you get down to it, there's been a lot come out in support of the trans community, several on the fence, but not really anybody come out with any gusto to support what JK Rowling is saying, and I wanted to look into that a bit deeper, so that's where we're at today, and then we're going to wrap it up with a little chat about some of the actors on the new series and what they've been saying. Are you ready? Strap in, get a snack, let's go. Stephen Fry believes JK Rowling is a lost cause who's been radicalized by TERFs. I would agree with that statement. Comedian Stephen Fry has turned on his pal JK Rowling, claiming she had been radicalized by TERFs. I think we need to move away from language like that. If a friend does something shitty, you're not turning on your friend by calling out their shitty behavior. It's like comedian Stephen Fry has called out JK Rowling's bigotry, claiming she's been radicalized by TERFs. He's not like turning on his pal. The gay author and actor who narrated the audiobooks for all 7 Harry Potter titles sparked controversy in 2022 when he failed to condemn her beliefs about trans people, despite saying his transgender friends had been left deeply upset by her views. I find that really interesting. I was kind of aware of his views back in 2022 and I read an article about them. I can't remember them super specifically, but it is interesting to me that somebody with trans friends would be able to be in any way on the fence over this situation, or at least not be able to be on the fence without alienating those trans friends and making them feel like that's no longer a safe friendship for them. But what has he said more recently? During a live recording of the Show People podcast at London bar The Two Brewers last week, he criticised the author and gender critical activist. I feel like it should be the other way around. I wonder when that balance is gonna tip of what she's most well known for and what people think of first when they think of JK Rowling. I feel like that balance is gonna go from like being Harry Potter at the minute to being transphobe. So Stephen Fry said, "She's been radicalized, I fear, and it may be she has been radicalized by TERFs, but also by the vitriol that is thrown at her," Fry told the Show People podcast. "It is unhelpful and only hardens her and will only continue to harden her, I'm afraid. She seems to be a lost cause for us." I see where that kind of statement is coming from. What that reads to me is he's going, all right, I think she got some of these ideas by TERFs and bought into them and then started expressing them and is now like doubling, tripling, quadrupling down because of the negativity she's getting back. But I feel like most decent people don't double down when they are called out so much for bigotry. There's a way in which you can do it of being like, wow, sorry, got the wrong end of the stick on this situation. I apologize for my previous statements. I'm gonna go do some learning and soul searching and listen to what people are saying, whilst also saying, however, I've been really offended and I want to call out the people who are being absolute arseholes. Because yeah, it is harder to listen to criticism when it's said in an angry or hateful way, but I don't think that being called out in a harsh way is any excuse for getting stronger in bigotry. Maybe we can say it doesn't help, but it's not an excuse. It should not be used to excuse her and what she's said and the fact that she's getting worse and worse in these views towards the trans community. He carried on by saying, "She started to make these peculiar statements and had very strong, difficult views. She seemed to wake up or kick a hornet's nest of transphobia, which has been entirely destructive. I disagree profoundly with her on this subject. I'm angry she does not disavow some of the more revolting and truly horrible, violently destructive things that people say. She does not attack those at all." And I think she's actually started saying them. No, she has started saying them. She has started saying things that are truly bizarre. They're kind of packaged in this pseudo-intellectual way that other people are buying into, so they don't seem so like vitriolly hateful, but underneath it they are. Like some of the stuff she's been saying recently, and even less recently, I don't think it's just that we should be angry that she's not calling out some of the more horrible things that are being said, but that she he is the one saying them as well. I appreciate what he's saying and where he's coming from, and it's great that he's taken a stronger stance in supporting the trans community. However, I'm not completely in agreement with where he's coming from on everything. Fry continued, she says things that are inflammatory and contemptuous, mocking, and add to a terribly distressing time for trans people. She has crowed at the success of legislation in Scotland and elsewhere, declaring things about gender. So I'm very happy to go on the record to say that I am really angry. My view about all things of a sharp and difficult nature is that it is much more important to be effective than to be right. I'm glad he also made a comment about the specific things that she said as well, not being nice, including like contemptuous and mocking and inflammatory, because it absolutely is. He had always liked Rowling and found her charming, funny, and interesting, but then this thing happened and it completely altered the way she talks and engages with the world now. The comments mark something of a departure from Fry's previous statement on trans issues. Appearing on Roger Bolton's Beeb Watch podcast 3 years ago, he said the fight for trans rights was an issue where two sides are very sore and very anxious about their enemies. I do think ever posing this as something that where there's two sides or it's a debate is wrong, and it's harmful to the trans community, because trans rights are human rights, and human rights are not something that is up for debate or where there should be two sides of. You're either for human rights or you're against them, and if you're against them, that's not a side where I'm going to take into account your feelings or where I think that you should have platforms to try and take away those human rights. He went on to say, Rowling's a friend of mine and I have trans friends and intersex friends who are deeply upset by her. That's a circle I have to square personally. I'm not going to abandon my friends. I think people really differ on this viewpoint of like turning their back on people and cutting people off for certain reasons. I do know of some people who I can't see them ever cutting people out of their life, regardless of what those people might do to them. And then there's other people who are, I'd never call it trigger happy, but who are confident in being like, you pull that shit on me and I'm gone. And what's the point in giving people all these chances? Like, why do you want to keep people around in your life that you can't see them growing? They don't listen. They're causing harm. I'm definitely in the middle of that. Like, I absolutely will, and I absolutely have cut people out of my life who are assholes to me and generally, but I am also willing to give second chances. But then if that gets messed up, reading on. It was an argument he did not want to get involved in because it was upsetting for both sides. I'd wish them both to retreat and to consider that it is possible for trans people to live full, accepted lives according to their terms in society, and for women to have all the rights and dignities that they demand. But it isn't possible if each side looks on the other as an enemy. This is really interesting. I don't want to go too deep into what he said 3 years ago, because clearly he has grown from those comments and is a lot stronger in his trans support. With this one though, I agree with that first bit, but I don't understand like both to retreat. I don't agree with that bit. But trans people were never the ones that thought that rights were pie and that trans people's rights were being impacted by women's rights in any way. That was never it. And there was never a want from trans people to impact women's rights in any way. It was always transphobic people who were hiding behind this guise of feminism and protecting women's rights in order to be transphobic. It's not actually a real argument. And like, to me, him bringing that up, it makes sense why he has, but only because I feel like he's bought into that transphobic argument of like, oh, we just care about women's rights, when that isn't the case. What do these transphobes actually do and say to protect women's rights in any way, shape or form? The only time I ever see them be loud about anything is to be transphobic. This whole women's rights versus trans rights is something that transphobes made up. So that's kind of the nutshell of where Stephen Fry's views have gone from, where I'd say he was very much trying to be like a friend to everybody and like, I don't want to turn my back on somebody for their views, but I have trans friends and I want to support them. I am supportive of the trans community, but I feel like everybody just needs to be nice to each other. That's kind of what it read as, whereas now it very much feels like, wow, no, she's like fully radicalized by TERFs, lost cause, she's saying horrible things that are causing a lot of damage, and I do not get behind that. And that's the reality of where we're at. That is objectively what's happening. She is saying some really horrific things about the trans community and continues to say them, and is now putting her money behind it, and we'll get into that a little bit more later. So this all happened yesterday from the day I'm filming this, which is the 23rd of June. So the day after it happened, JK Rowling did reply back. JK Rowling hits back at Stephen Fry after he claims she's been radicalized. Author JK Rowling has hit back after Stephen Fry said he believes she was a lost cause who may have been radicalized by TERFs. Responding through a comment made by the Good Law Project, who you should go check out, they're doing great things, who had praised Fry's recent comments, Rowling wrote on X/Twitter, "It is a great mistake to assume that everyone who claims to have been a friend of mine was ever considered a friend by me." I mean, even in Stephen Fry's comments 3 years ago, he referred to her as a friend. And okay, the vibe that that comment gives me is,
I don't actually have anything of substance to say, so I'm going to pick at this use of the word friend that's been used by somebody else.
And it's like
You can't fire me, I quit.
like,
He can't go against me as a friend because he was never my friend in the first place.
he's not actually saying anything about what he said. It's not actually a rebuttal of him claiming she's been radicalized by TERFs or that what she says is harmful. It's just her going,
Oh, well, if he says that, then we were never friends in the first place. Ugh.
that's what it feels like. It's just a very nothing response. And this leads me on to the next section of the video, which is Stephen Fry's viewpoints have clearly progressed in the past few years. And I wonder if anybody else's has as well. That would be speculative at this point. I think the only other person who's very recently spoken out is Jason Isaacs, which we'll get to at a point, but I don't think his stance has really changed. It's interesting. But I wanted to have a chat about generally the viewpoints of the original cast of the Harry Potter movies, because I actually find the pattern of it really interesting. And so I'm going to go through an article from a year ago. It's called A Comprehensive List of Every Harry Potter Actor Who Supports JK Rowling and Who Doesn't, and also lists some people on the fence. I don't think it includes everybody who's spoken about it, because I don't think people like David Tennant are on this list, who he was in the movie series, and he is such a strong advocate for the trans community and very, very much against Rowling's viewpoints. So I think this article does just cover the very main and more prominent cast members. So those who are against JK Rowling, I'm sure a lot of you watching are aware that the main three cast of Daniel Radcliffe, Emma Watson and Rupert Grint have all been very vocally supportive of the trans community since all of this has kicked off with JK Rowling. So Daniel Radcliffe first slammed JK Rowling in an essay he posted on the Trevor Project website, a non-profit organization that provides suicide prevention and crisis intervention for LGBTQIA+ people in need. Transgender women are women, Radcliffe wrote. Any statement to the contrary erases the identity and dignity of transgender people and goes against all advice given by professional healthcare associations who have far more expertise on the subject matter than either Joe or I. He reiterated the same sentiment later on by saying, the reason I felt very, very much as though I needed to say something when I did was because, particularly since finishing Potter, I've met so many queer and trans kids and young people who had a huge amount of identification with Potter on that. He said, I don't think I would have been able to look myself in the mirror had I not said anything, but it's not mine to guess what's going on in someone else's head. Emma Watson, who played Hermione Granger, has also spoken out against JK Rowling's viewpoints and been very trans supportive. Trans people are who they say they are and deserve to live their lives without being constantly questioned or told they aren't who they say they are. I want my trans followers to know that I and so many other people around the world see you, respect you, and love you for who you are. Watson also shaded Rowling at the 2022 BAFTA Awards by saying she was claiming the award in the name of all witches.
I'm here for all of the witches.
She has done more. She's posted like wearing trans supportive t-shirts and things, and she said a few other bits, but I think this article is just like condensing it down. And then Rupert Grint as well. I firmly stand with the trans community and echo the sentiments expressed by many of my peers. Trans women are women, trans men are men. We should all be entitled to live with love and without judgment. Katie Leung, who played Cho Chang, has also spoken out against JK Rowling. She was very, very strongly trans supportive from the offset, but has since deleted her Twitter account. But in this article, it says, not only did she slam Rowling for racism and transphobia, but she also made sure to highlight black trans people who are some of the most vulnerable people on the planet. Ivana Lynch, who played Luna Lovegood, I've read contradicting things about what Ivana Lynch has said. I'll read it in a second, and it is a year old, so I don't know if anything's happened since, but I feel like she was kind of saying,
Oh, I support trans people, but I also still really admire JK Rowling.
kind of vibe. She was like sitting on the fence, but while saying she liked both. So she said, I'm so saddened to see trans people feel abandoned by the Harry Potter community, she wrote on Twitter in 2020. However, in a follow-up tweet, she said, I think it's irresponsible to discuss such a delicate topic over Twitter through fragmented thoughts, and I wish Jo wouldn't. That said, as a friend and admirer of Jo, I can't forget what a generous and loving person she is. In 2022, she said, I really strongly disagree with the narrative that there's a rift. She has her beliefs and she's doing her thing. We all have strong beliefs and it's been a very difficult conversation. I want there to be healing and I don't want us to keep fighting. These comments did receive a lot of positive feedback from TERFs, who applauded Lynch for not being consumed by the woke witch hunt. This article says that it feels wrong to put Lynch in the on the fence category because she's still vehemently pro-trans, which is automatically anti-Rowling. Yeah, I see why they've not put her on the fence, but I'm unsure of her stance. But she's definitely said like she supports the trans community, but then she seems very stuck on like,
Oh, I feel like I've been given so much by JK Rowling and I don't want to turn my back on her.
that's the vibe I'm getting. Chris Rankin, who played Percy Weasley, he said, I do a lot of work with charities that are LGBTQ plus focused and I raise money for the Albert Kennedy Trust on a regular basis. A lot of my family are members of the community. It's a huge part of my life and I think think by saying that you can probably guess why my allegiances lie in that respect. What is important to highlight is that when a trans person says they are male or female, that is what they are and that is how we should treat them. It is damaging to say otherwise. Bonnie Wright, who played Ginny Weasley, back in 2020 when all of this first started, she tweeted, "If Harry Potter was a source of love and belonging for you, that love is infinite and there to take without judgment or question. Trans women are women. I see and love you, Bonnie." Eddie Redmayne, who wasn't in the original TV but was in the, I don't remember what they're called, but the later Harry Potter movies, he said, "As someone who has worked with both JK Rowling and members of the trans community, I wanted to make it absolutely clear where I stand. I disagree with Joe's comment. Trans women are women, trans men are men, and non-binary identities are valid. I would never want to speak on behalf of the community, but I do know that my dear transgender friends and colleagues are tired of this constant questioning of their identities, which all too often results in violence and abuse. They simply want to live their lives peacefully, and it's time to let them do so." Harry Melling, who played Dudley Dursley, he said, "I can only speak for myself, and what I feel to me is very simple, which is that transgender women are women and transgender men are men. Every single person has the right to choose who they are and to identify themselves as what's true to themselves. I don't want to join the debate of pointing fingers and saying that's right, that's wrong, because I don't think I'm the correct spokesperson for that, but I do believe that everybody has the right to choose." So some people that are labelled as on the fence. The first is Jason Isaacs, who I'm going to go through what he said here and what's covered in this article and then give an update. So he said in 2022, "There's a bunch of stuff about Jo. I don't want to get drawn into the trans issues talking about them because it's such an extraordinary minefield. One of the things that people should know about her too, not as a counter argument, is that she has poured an enormous amount of her fortune into making the world a much better place for hundreds of thousands of vulnerable children through her charity Lumos. And that is unequivocally good. Many of us Harry Potter actors have worked for and seen on the ground the work that they do. So for all that she has said some very controversial things, I was not going to be jumping to stab her in the front or back without a conversation with her, which I've not managed to have yet." That does very much sound on the fence. He's not really said what his specific viewpoint is about what she's saying, but he doesn't sound totally in agreement with her. I think it's really important to acknowledge that good people can do bad things and bad people can do good things, but also just because you've done a good thing over here doesn't mean we excuse the bad thing that you've done or you are doing over here. You can say, "Thank you, well done, please stop, this is awful," and that's okay. We can acknowledge both. We can acknowledge somebody's good parts and their bad parts without feeling like we're betraying them for calling out the negativity that they're causing. As a little update though, this article is also from June 2025. Harry Potter star on JK Rowling's trans views, "I don't understand who she is" on Twitter. I feel like he's still very much coming across like he's on the fence and he's not saying anything like super strong. And I don't know how many people are taking this stance because they're worried to weigh in, both in terms of getting backlash from either side, because whilst there's several people, including people who are like, yeah, pro-trans, but also let's stop being a dick to JK Rowling, let's call things out calmly, I don't think anybody's really saying like, oh, but all the hate that is getting directed at the trans community, the death threats and the absolute disgusting hate and just the vile things that people say to trans people, both online and in real life, none of that is ever mentioned in this. It's all like,
"Oh, but I think people are being too harsh."
I was like, but she's literally advocating and putting money behind people's rights being taken away. Of course they're gonna get angry. What I was saying is, I think some people are scared to be pro-trans publicly because they see the disgusting hate that comes from the transphobe camp, and they don't want to be part of that, and they don't want to go against somebody that gave them a massive opportunity in their career. And I also think some people are quiet because they just don't know enough and they're not interested enough, which is not good enough. Sitting on the fence when a marginalized group are being so oppressed is being on the side of the oppressor at this point. Anyway, Harry Potter star Jason Isaacs has shut down questions about author JK Rowling's anti-trans views, but said if there is a vote on the issue, he knows which side I'll be voting. In an in-depth interview carried out by Andrew Goldman, Isaacs was asked what his views are on Rowling's anti-trans campaigning. "You're asking me to be Joe's spokesperson and unpack what's going on in Joe's head," he asked. "No, I just assumed you have a relationship with her and wondered if you had an opinion," Goldman responded. "I've met her once for about 2 minutes." "Really?" Goldman asked. "That was it," Isaacs confirmed, saying he worked for Rowling's charity Lumos. "People want me to talk about JK Rowling's attitude to trans people all the time, and initially I went, I don't know her well enough, and I'm a straight white man in late middle age, and it's not for me to opine on feminist and trans issues. But then I championed this fabulous trans comedian, Jordan Gray, and wrote about her, and I suddenly became a poster boy for trans rights." So he's clearly not transphobic. Isaac said his support was interpreted as me putting the knife into Joe, and it wasn't. "I don't understand who she is on Twitter, but then that's true of almost anybody online. It's a place where people scream abuse at each other, he explained. It does go beyond Twitter though, when she starts putting her money towards court cases and other things. And I've heard her arguments when she explained herself in that 7-part podcast, The Witch Trials of JK Rowling, which I listened to. She says in that something like, I may be on the wrong side of history, but this is what I feel very strongly. It's not my argument or discussion to have, but if there is a vote, I know which side I'll be voting. That to me reads as if he is pro-trans, but because he's a cis straight man, he feels like he can't definitively comment because JK Rowling relies so heavily on the fact that she's a woman and she claims to be a feminist, and then he's also not trans. Honestly, I see why he's been put on the fence, and he probably kind of still is there, but I would say if push came to shove, he would be more on the side of being trans supportive. But he's one of those people that doesn't feel like he maybe has a right to speak out publicly, because maybe he doesn't know quite enough, where he's not sure if he spoke out in support of the trans community, if that would be seen as him speaking out against women. But then if he spoke out for JK Rowling and women and their anti-trans camp, then he would be seen as being transphobic. And so maybe he's like, well, I'm both pro-feminism and pro-trans, and I don't know how to navigate this without seeming like I'm turning my back on one or the other. That may or may not be the situation. That's just my interpretation. But regardless, it is definitely the situation for some people. And that is the power on this manipulative ideology and campaigning and rhetoric from transphobic people to hide behind things like feminism, because they're not feminists. Trans rights and women's rights are not in opposition with one another. Saying you support trans people in no way says that you don't support women. They're not against each other. It's really bizarre that they've been pitted that way. It's bizarre, but it makes sense because it's a way in for transphobes and it's a shield for them. They hide behind that guise of feminism, and they also hide behind wanting to protect children. So it's all very bizarre. So yeah, that was just an update on Jason Isaac's statements. Also, a year ago, Tom Felton was put on the fence. I don't know if we can put him on the fence because he's just reprised his role as Draco Malfoy in the stage production of the Cursed Child thing. He said something like, I'm not like attuned to the issues. He didn't speak out with any kind of gusto on either side. And then also said that nothing's brought the world together like Potter. And praised JK Rowling for creating it. But he has said things like, I'm pro-choice, I'm pro-life, I'm pro-discussion, I'm pro-love, I don't tend to pick sides. How can you be pro-choice and pro-life? I don't know. Maybe he doesn't even know what his own opinion is in this situation, but he's clearly too afraid to have any kind of opinion publicly. So he can definitely stay firmly on the fence. And then something I wanted to discuss generally about this whole conversation is there are some cast members who've been put in this camp of like in support of JK Rowling. But if you actually read what they've said, it doesn't sound like anybody's come out and said like,
Oh no, I totally agree. Like, this is what I think about trans people too.
it's mostly people going like, oh, I don't like to see the hate she's receiving, and also I don't really understand what she said that's so bad. That's not also saying that you are anti-trans. It's just you totally not understanding. I don't think I've heard of a cast member actually coming out and going,
I fully agree with everything she says. I'm very much anti-trans. I don't think trans women are women.
like, I've never seen any of them say stuff like that. Most of it is like,
Oh, I don't like to see that she's being hated on.
so Robbie Coltrane, who played Hagrid, in 2020, he said, I don't think what she said was offensive, really. I don't know why, but there's a whole Twitter generation of people who hang around waiting to be offended. They wouldn't have won the war, would they? That's me talking like a grumpy old man. That just sounds like somebody who doesn't give a shit and just thinks that people who argue on Twitter are millennials and Gen Z who are overly sensitive. That doesn't feel like he actually has an opinion on trans people or what JK Rowling has said. He's just like, I don't know why people have to argue on Twitter, when she's the one that's starting the argument. Ralph Fiennes, who played Voldemort, and this bit starts with, are we surprised that the man who played He Who Must Not Be Named supports She Who Must Not Be Named? In 2021, he said he can't understand the vitriol directed at JK Rowling. I can understand the heat of an argument, but I find this age of accusation and the need to condemn irrational. I find the level of hatred that people express about views that differ from theirs and the violence of language towards others disturbing. And this article's asked, what about Rowling's hatred and violence of language, like towards the trans community, which is a very valid question. He's also said in 2022, JK Rowling has written these great books about empowerment, about young children finding themselves as human beings. It's about how you become a better, stronger, more morally centered human being. The verbal abuse directed at her is disgusting. It's appalling. This article also says, would love to see Ralph Fiennes do a live reading of JK Rowling's tweets and see how he feels about what's disgusting and what isn't. But again, he's not saying he supports her views. He's just saying, why do people have to be mean on Twitter? And also, she wrote these books, so like, let's let's forgive her. And like, yeah, she did write these books that so many people interpreted as like standing up for the underdog and telling you to be your true self. And then she seemingly went totally against that messaging. Helena Bonham Carter is also in the camp of being pro JK Rowling. In 2022, she said, I think she's been hounded. It's been taken to the extreme, the judgmentalism of people. She's allowed her opinion, particularly if she's suffered abuse. Everyone carries their own history of trauma and forms their opinions from that trauma, and you have to respect where people come from and their pain. But it's not an excuse. Just because that's where your opinion comes from doesn't give you an excuse to use it to hate on other people. We can all grow from the forming. We can all learn. We can all become better people. We can all open our minds more as we experience the world and as we talk through our traumas. She's also said, personally, I feel they should let her have her opinions, but I think they're very aware of protecting their own fan base and their generation. Weird that JK Rowling can have her opinions, but the people against her shouldn't argue them. Interesting. I am really curious about how much of this is just some people not wanting to speak out against her because they feel like she helped them. Jim Broadbent, who played Horace Slughorn, said, I think JK Rowling is amazing. I haven't had to confront the backlash myself, but I would support her in that, I think, if it came to it. So wishy-washy. Most of it is just people like acknowledging the books that she wrote and thinking that she's really cool for that, and like taking a full step back and being like,
Yeah, don't hate on her, but I'm not actually going to comment on what she said.
nobody's come out and said yes. There's so many people with so much gusto have come out in support of the trans community, but seemingly nobody with that same level of gusto has come out in support of JK Rowling, who's been involved in the Harry Potter series, which I think is very interesting. Some cast members who had no comment include Gary Oldman, who played Sirius Black, Julie Walters, who played Molly Weasley, Michael Gambon, who played Dumbledore, and Maggie Smith, who played Professor McGonagall. Very interesting. Yeah, I really do think it's a stretch, the ones that have been labelled like in support of JK Rowling. They just seem to be against the hate she's getting on Twitter, but it's really unclear whether they actually agree with her opinions. They just seem to agree that she's entitled to have her opinions and to share them and not be hated for them. But I wonder if they would feel the same way if she was speaking out against another marginalized community in the same way and at the same rate that she speaks against the trans community, which is multiple times a day seemingly. And then just very quickly, there's been so much controversy over the new TV series, and bizarrely to me, I've not seen any of the actors come out and be like, no, I support what she's saying, I really want to be involved in this project, trans rights, you know? I've not seen anybody do that. So it's just like the old cast where nobody was really like,
Yes, JK Rowling, I agree with you.
nobody's doing that here, but a couple people have come out in support of the trans community, and it's very interesting that they're then still taking part. Like, are they getting paid a lot of money? Do they see this as like a massive break for their career? Is something else going on? Is there like really complicated contract stuff? I have not, like, why? If you support the trans community and you understand like an ounce of what's going on, why? Anyway, one of the actors is Papa Essiedu, who's playing Snape in the reboot. He was among about 1,500 actors who signed a letter in support of trans rights. The letter, expressing solidarity with the trans and non-binary community, demands that industry institutions such as BAFTA, BBC, BFI and Channel 4 commit to protecting and including trans people. Essiedu's decision to sign in support follows his recent casting as Severus Snape in HBO's Harry Potter show, which is produced by JK Rowling. Eddie Redmayne, who starred in Harry Potter spin-off Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, also signed the letter. So that's interesting. And then there's also Nick Frost, who I was very disappointed to hear was taking part in this because I'm a big fan of his previous work. He has this month said that JK Rowling's views don't align with his own. The series creator JK Rowling is allowed her opinion, but it doesn't align with his own views. He's going to be playing Hagrid, but in an interview with The Observer, Frost spoke about Rowling saying she's allowed her opinion and I'm allowed mine, they just don't align in any way, shape or form. Asked if he thinks the discourse could detract from the series, he added, I don't know, but maybe it shouldn't blow over. We shouldn't just hope it will go away because it makes it easier. Maybe we should educate ourselves. Frost's support of the trans community doesn't come as a surprise. One of his next big projects is reportedly starring alongside trans comic Jordan Gray in her trans-focused ITV supermarket sitcom Transaction. I'm very excited to watch that. It sounds really good. And that's just honestly fascinating to me. And I think what that comes across as is kind of where a lot of pro-trans people but Harry Potter enjoyers were in like 2021, maybe 2022 kind of era, where it was very much like, let's separate the art from the artist. And I think that's where this is coming from, of like, hey, Harry Potter is this thing that's so popular and let's carry on and I'm really excited to take this role on, but separating that from the fact that I really disagree with the creator's viewpoints, they don't align with mine at all, and I support trans people. I think that would have have been okay a few years ago, but now we're at a point where JK Rowling donated £70,000 to a recent Supreme Court ruling that is seeing trans rights being taken away. And that is a huge amount of money to donate, and she's now more directly putting her Harry Potter wealth into harming the trans community. JK Rowling's new organization will fund cis women fighting to exclude trans women from public life. So we are definitely at a point where you can't separate the art from the artist, whilst the artist still very much benefits from the art and uses those benefits to take away the rights of a marginalized community and continue her campaign of bigotry. So whilst it's nice to know that all of the cast members in the new series aren't like on side with her or just completely ignoring the situation, it is bizarre that they're acknowledging that they don't agree with her and that they support the trans community, but they're still very much taking part in the series. And I think that must come from a place of still separating the two. And it would be nice to very quickly get to a point where people realize that we are not able to separate them anymore because literally of where she's putting her money and where she's using her power. So yeah, that was my very impromptu video having a look at the support, lack of support for the trans community from Harry Potter cast members past and present, and just the fact that there really isn't the support for JK Rowling from the cast, like really anywhere. It's all just about not liking to see her be hated on. I don't think I've seen a Harry Potter cast member actually be transphobic or share transphobic views. There's just some of them who aren't willing to speak out against JK Rowling, or who don't want to, or who don't care enough. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, think about giving a thumbs up and subscribing. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. You can also go check out my Patreon. You can see some names of my Patrons up the screen right now. And I want to give a big shout out to my top tier Patreons: Albar, Chloe, Elden K, Gosco, Iona Balash, Jesse Entwistle, Marv Mallow, Max Makes Mods, Night Soul, Nesta, Rachel Raptor, Randy, River Champagne, Rye Loves Rory, Sienna Lamb, Slayer, Sugar Joe, The Third Hat Man, TNS Mum, Sally Drew, and Sarah Hobbs. Thank you so much. You can go support me over there if you want to. The link is in the description box, but no worries if you don't want to. There's no pressure. And yeah, as always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Much love. Bye.